Good morning, folks. I just got my 9Barista this last week, and I've had a chance to put a few cups of coffee through it. As you can see, it comes with the machine itself, a heat diffuser, a nice steel and aluminum tamper. Comes in a very nice environmentally friendly box and has both a user guide with just enough detail describing all the parts of the machine and how to use it, some safety precautions and notes, and then a couple of other nifty items in there. And of course, you can visit the website if you're interested for more. We also have a troubleshooting guide, which has a few common things that you might run into, as well as a detail of the machine on the back. First things you notice about the machine when you pull it out of the box is it's really hefty. It's a solid piece of machinery and comes in right around there. That's what it is on my scale. The gram weight may vary depending on a little bit of manufacturing variation or sensitivity on your scale. So I'll take you through some of the different aspects of it. As you take it apart, you'll notice that the portafilter locks into the group head with a couple of lugs, and the lugs are two different sizes, so you can't accidentally put the portafilter onto the group head in the wrong orientation. This one's a little bit bigger and it has to go on the other side. But then once you do that, it locks in nicely. Once you take the portafilter off, you notice it's got a nice clean finish on the inside there. And then on the bottom side, you have the silicone keeper for the grounds. The basket itself is held in by a couple of spring steel pieces. Inside the group head, you've got a nice red O-ring, and that does a really good job of preventing any water or espresso blow-by as it's pushing the high pressure water up through the basket. Also here, you've got the chimney, and if you're following in detail how this particular machine works, you'll understand that you want a good flow of steam coming out of this, but not an awkward flow of water splatters during the actual espresso making process. When you're unscrewing this, the group head from the boiler, you get a really good sense of how well this is made. The machining and the threading is just so smooth. It's really pretty impressive. Once you take the group head off, you see some of the O-rings that you're going to be dealing with. Certainly this one here that seals around the top of the boiler, and then this one that seals around on the inside once you've got it screwed down. You want to pay particular attention to this cutout here, as this is something that allows the water that's in the boiler to flow up past until you get to the point where this O-ring seals against the inside of the boiler, and that gets some of that water up around this area for the coils to heat up with. The boiler again is really nicely put together. We've got a couple of, well, we got some words around the inside, and I think it may be difficult to see, but it says right in here on the top edge, please fill to here, and it says that in several places around the perimeter, so you know exactly where to fill it just in case you forgot. So also on the boiler, you've got the pressure release valve. It's pretty stiff. Just push down on that to release the pressure, and it creates a little bit of a gap right here. You can see on the inside that when you push that lever, it pulls against the spring there. everything about this just screams quality to me. I like the way it's put together. I like the finish. I like the fit. And even on the bottom side, you can see we've got the logo, and apparently I've got serial number 191. Pretty happy with this so far. We're starting with 120 mils of water, and yes, I did tear out the weight of the cup before I added the water to it. We're going to take the 120 mils of water and pour it in. And you can see it gets it pretty close to that line. And you can see also the please fill to here marking on there. So I think we're just a little bit shy of the line, but it's still going to suffice to do what we need it to do. I'm going to only add 15 grams of coffee, as I want a slightly lighter cup of espresso when we're done with this. With the water in the boiler, we'll go ahead and put this in, and what will happen here is this O-ring will seal down into the boiler underneath where the water level is, because once all this stuff goes into where the water is, pushes that water level up here, and again that's where that cutout comes in handy. So we go in, and I can see the water coming up over the coils at this point. Screw it, and then at this point we feel the O-ring start to bite, so it doesn't spin as easily. Now I have to actually push it down into place. And in fact, we know we're getting a little bit of pressure buildup, because in this case, if I were to push this, we'd get a little bit of water come out, just like that. So we know the O-ring is working. Also at this point, you want to make sure not to tilt the machine too far one way or the other, otherwise water will come up out of the chimney, because there's water in this section around the coils that will kind of turn to steam later on when we put it on the stove. So be sure not to tilt the machine too far over, or you will get some spillage out of here. Now we'll take that 15 grams of coffee, and no, I don't have one of those fancy new distributors, so I'll just take it for granted that I'm going to get this right. And tamps down nicely. Once you're done with that, you put the basket cap in there. Again, the basket cap is not necessary for sealing this in here. That's the O-ring's job. It just keeps these grounds up in here during the brewing process. And then specifically, it keeps them from falling back down onto here once the brewing process is complete. I have successfully brewed a cup of espresso with the basket cap not in place, and it worked just fine, because once you tamp that coffee in there, it tends to stay in place pretty well unless you knock it on something. So I was meticulous about not doing that, just to see if it'd work, and it does. So if you find that you lose this piece, or it gets deteriorated over time, you can probably still make coffee without it. But I think it's a little bit more pleasant experience taking everything apart with this in place. So from here, we'll assemble everything back together. Again, we got the two different size locking lugs, so this can only go together in one position. So we'll start like that, and just a little bit of tension to put it together, and we'll move it over to the stove. First, we've got the timer and an additional digital thermometer. We're at about 6,800 feet elevation above sea level, and that'll play a role in what the temperature of the coil is here. It's supposed to be 100 Celsius, but I think it'll be closer to 94 Celsius when it comes to a boil here because of the increased elevation. I'm going to go ahead and put the stove on and start my timer. And what I found is that I have to put the stove on just below the complete high point. If I put it up too high, I end up with a lot of that water splattering out of the chimney off to the side. Still get a decent cup of espresso, but it creates a little bit more mess for me to clean up. We're at almost 5 minutes now, and I can start to hear a little bit of noise from the machine. And if I check the temperature around the coils, we're getting up close to there's that steam coming out, a little bit of splashing. And my ultimate temperature here looks like 93. And then what we have coming up in here is pretty nice as well. So I'll turn off the heat. And in fact, there's our time, right at 6 minutes. Nicely done, 9Barista. I'll give that just a few more seconds. And as I pull it off the heat, I can tell you that the handle here is warm, but not hot to the touch. If you're at all concerned about that, though, just use a towel or an oven mitt or something like that, but really not an issue. Nor is this handle hot at all. It's slightly less warm than this one. Machine's heating up. We've got quite a bit of steam coming out, and we should expect the shot to pull here pretty quickly. Turn off the heat and we'll move from there. I've zeroed out the shot glass, so we'll see if we actually get that 20 mil shot that they advertise. Experience has taught me that it's going to be pretty close, and then of course you can't have a good cup of espresso without a good cup to have it in. Getting ready to pour. We've got that ready. Still making a little bit of noise because it's pretty hot. We get a nice round, almost 45 grams, or mils. That's a decent looking cup of coffee. We'll transfer this over. And enjoy a drink. Now this is still definitely too hot to touch. You can see the steam still coming out of the chimney. So we'll cool it. Actually, before I even do that, I was going to cool it down, but let me show you what happens if you tilt it. There's still some water in here. So that's going to come out. And that's the water that was up around the coils. But we'll go ahead and cool this down, and I'll come back in just a moment to show you something else. Alright, I've got it cooled down enough that I can take the portafilter off the top without blowing things up. And there we go. What you'll notice is there's always a little bit of muddy water up there on the top of the group head. And it's a little bit warm, but not too bad. A little bit of coffee grounds coming down there as well, but you're left with a really nice solid puck. which I'll knock out in just a moment. The other thing is, it's cool to the touch. I mean, there's no problem here, but there's still going to be a little bit of pressure. So when I release this, a little bit of a hiss of air, and then just unscrew it, nice and easy. And what you'll see once we got all this off is that there's still just a little bit of water left inside there.